The ice moon of Kethros 7 was a cold and lifeless place. Nothing lived there. Nothing grew there. The only sounds were the howling winds and the grinding of ancient glaciers. For millions of years, this frozen world had kept its secrets buried deep beneath the ice. Overseer Thalnak did not care about secrets. He cared about minerals. His mining crew had been drilling into the ice for 3 months, searching for the rare crystals that powered starships across the galaxy. The Valorian Collective paid well for such treasures. Thalnak intended to find them. On that particular morning, something strange happened. The drilling machines stopped. The scanners went wild with signals that made no sense. Thalnak pushed his way through his workers and stared at the screen with his 4 yellow eyes. "What is this?" he demanded. "We do not know, Overseer," said one of his technicians. "There is something down there. Something very large. It is made of metal." Thalnak felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Metal meant a ship. A ship buried 3 kilometers under the ice meant something very old. Something that someone had wanted to hide. "Dig it out," he ordered. It took 2 more weeks to reach the object. When they finally broke through the last layer of ice, Thalnak stood at the edge of the massive hole and looked down at something that stole the breath from his lungs. It was a ship. But not just any ship. This vessel was nearly 2 kilometers long. Its hull was gray and scarred, covered in symbols that Thalnak did not recognize at first. Then the lights from his workers' equipment fell upon a faded marking on the side, and his blood turned to ice. The symbols spelled out words in a language that had not been spoken in 600 years. The language of the humans USS Valiant. Thalnak stumbled backward. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories. The humans had been monsters. They had fought against the great powers of the galaxy with a fury that defied reason. They had refused to surrender. They had refused to die. The war against them had lasted for decades, and in the end, humanity had simply vanished. Their homeworld went silent. Their fleets disappeared. The galaxy had celebrated, believing the threat was finally over. But now, here was a human ship, and it was enormous. "Get away from it," Thalnak shouted to his workers. "Everyone get back now." Before anyone could move, lights flickered to life inside the ancient vessel. A deep hum filled the air, vibrating through the ice and into the bones of every worker present. The ship was waking up, deep within the frozen warship. Systems that had slept for centuries began to stir. Emergency power flowed through cables that had not carried current since before Thalnak's grandfather was born. In the main computer core, an artificial intelligence named Athena opened her digital eyes for the first time in 600 years. She ran diagnostics. Hull integrity was at 62%. Primary weapons were offline. Life support was functional. And in the cryogenic bay, 400 human beings were still alive. Frozen in dreamless sleep, Athena began the revival sequence. It would take time. Human bodies were fragile things, and waking them too quickly would kill them. But she had waited 6 centuries. She could wait a few more hours. In pod number 1, Captain Jack Morrison felt warmth spreading through his frozen limbs. His heart began to beat again. His lungs drew in their first breath of recycled air. His eyes opened slowly and he saw only darkness. "Athena," he whispered, his voice rough from centuries of silence. "Report." "Good morning, Captain," said a calm female voice. "I regret to inform you that you have been in cryogenic suspension for approximately 614 years. Our current location is an ice moon designated Kethros 7. We appear to have been buried beneath the surface. Additionally, alien life forms have breached our outer hull." Jack closed his eyes and let that information sink in. 600 years. Everyone he had ever known outside this ship was dead. Earth, his home, was beyond reach. And now aliens were aboard his vessel. "Wake the others," he said. "Start with Commander Sullivan and Chief Reyes." "Already in progress, Captain." Jack forced his stiff body out of the pod. His muscles screamed in protest. His joints cracked. But he was a soldier, and soldiers did not have the luxury of weakness. He found his uniform hanging nearby, preserved in a sealed container. He dressed slowly, his fingers clumsy but determined. By the time he reached the bridge, Kate Sullivan was already there. Her red hair was messy and dark circles hung under her eyes, but her gaze was sharp and focused. Sam Reyes stood at the engineering station, running his hands over controls that had not been touched in centuries. "Captain on the bridge," Kate announced. Jack took his seat in the command chair. The view screen flickered to life, showing the hole above them and the alien workers staring down in terror. "Athena, can we communicate with them? I am analyzing their language now. Translation will be ready in approximately 4 minutes."
Jack nodded.
"What happened to Earth? What happened to the war?" Athena paused, and that pause told Jack everything he needed to know. "I have no information, Captain. All communication with human space was lost shortly after we entered emergency cryogenic suspension. I have been unable to contact any human vessels or installations." Kate looked at Jack, her face pale. "We might be all that is left." Jack did not answer. He watched the aliens above, saw their fear, and understood that the galaxy had not forgotten humanity. Whatever had happened 600 years ago, the old hatreds remained. Outside, Thalnuk had already sent his distress signal. Within hours, every power in the galaxy would know the terrible truth. The humans were back. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings watched their screens in horror as the footage played again and again. A human warship, massive and ancient, rising from the ice of a forgotten moon. The nightmare had returned. On the Valorian homeworld, Ambassador Veleth stood before the Galactic Concord Assembly. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from every major species, and all of them were shouting at once. "Silence!" Veleth roared, his voice amplified by the hall's speakers. The noise died down slowly. "We all know what this means. The humans were supposed to be extinct. They were supposed to be gone forever. But they are not gone. They are alive, and they have a warship." A Drath representative stood up. His name was Admiral Voreth, and he was old enough to remember the stories his grandfather had told him. Stories of human soldiers who kept fighting even when they were wounded. Stories of human ships that refused to die, no matter how many times they were hit. "We must destroy them immediately," Voreth declared. "Before they can rebuild, before they can find others. One ship we can handle, an entire fleet we cannot." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Valorians and the Drath had been rivals for centuries. But on this matter, they found common ground. A third voice spoke up. Perlate Cirrus of the Cenari Federation rose gracefully from her seat. The Cenari were traders, not warriors, and they had grown wealthy by staying neutral in the conflicts of others. "Perhaps we should not be so hasty," she said smoothly. "We do not know how many humans remain. We do not know their intentions. Would it not be wiser to learn more before we act?" "The Cenari care only for profit," Voreth sneered. "You would trade with the humans if it made you rich, even if they slaughtered the rest of us." Cirrus smiled, showing no offense. "Trade is civilization, Admiral. War is the absence of it." The debate continued, but the outcome was already decided. The Valorians and the Drath would not wait. They would not take risks. Too many of their ancestors had died fighting humans to let this threat go unanswered. Meanwhile, aboard the Valiant, Captain Jack Morrison was learning just how much the galaxy had changed in 600 years. Athena had finally cracked the alien communication systems. She could now intercept and translate broadcasts from across the known worlds. What she found was not encouraging. "Captain, I have monitored over 4,000 separate transmissions regarding our awakening," she reported. 93% express fear or hostility. 6% express curiosity. 1% express support or sympathy. Jack stood at the viewport watching the stars. Behind him, Kate Sullivan studied tactical displays while Sam Reyes worked to bring more systems online. "What do they say about Earth?" Jack asked quietly. Athena hesitated before answering. "Historical records indicate that approximately 10 years after our disappearance, a coalition of alien species launched a coordinated attack on human-controlled space. Earth was bombarded from orbit. The colonies were destroyed one by one. Official records state that no human survivors remained. Kate slammed her fist against the console. They killed everyone. While we were frozen, they murdered our entire species. They tried to murder our species, Jack corrected. We are still here. Sam Reyes looked up from his work. His face was covered in grease and sweat, but his eyes burned with anger. Captain, I have been reviewing our weapon systems. The main railguns are operational. Point defense is at 70%. Missile bays are empty, but we have the materials to manufacture more. How long? 2 weeks for a basic loadout. A month for full capacity. Oh, Jack nodded slowly. They did not have a month. The aliens would come for them long before then. But he would not run. Humans did not run. What about propulsion? He asked. Engines are damaged, but functional. We can manage about 60% thrust. Faster than light drive needs repairs, but I can have it working in 3 days. Kate stepped forward. Captain, we cannot fight the entire galaxy. There are 400 of us, and billions of them. We need a plan, I know. Jack turned to face his officers. These were good people. They had served with him for years before the long sleep. They deserved honesty. I do not know what happened to our people. I do not know if we are the last humans in the universe, but I know this. We will not start a war. We will not fire the first shot. However, if they come for us, we will defend ourselves, and we will make them remember why they feared us. Kate smiled grimly. Sounds like a plan to me. In the days that followed, the crew of the Valiant worked without rest. They repaired systems that had been silent for centuries. They trained with weapons they hoped they would not need to use. They prepared for the battle that everyone knew was coming. Dr. Amy Lynn moved through the medical bay, checking on crew members still recovering from the long cryogenic sleep. Many were confused and frightened. Some wept when they learned what had happened to Earth. Amy held their hands and spoke soft words of comfort, even though her own heart was breaking. We are still here, she told them. As long as one human draws breath, humanity lives. Outside the ship, the galaxy continued to panic. The Drath Emperor dispatched his finest war fleet under Admiral Voroth's command, 12 battlecruisers loaded with weapons and soldiers. Enough firepower to destroy a planet? Voroth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars blur as his fleet raced toward Cathro-Savan. He had studied human tactics. He knew their tricks. This time, there would be no escape. This time the humans would die. But deep in his hearts, in a place he would never admit existed, Admiral Voroth felt something he had not experienced in decades. He felt afraid because his grandfather had told him one more story. A story about a human soldier who had been surrounded, outnumbered, and wounded beyond hope. And that soldier had smiled. Humans are most dangerous, his grandfather had whispered, when they have nothing left to lose. Voroth pushed the memory aside. Fear was for the weak. He was Drath, he was strong, but he ordered his fleet to prepare twice the normal ammunition, just in case. The Drath fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 12 battlecruisers arranged in an attack pattern that had crushed 100 enemies before. Admiral Voroth stood on his command bridge. Watching the human ship grow larger on his view screen, the Valiant hung in space like a slumbering giant. Even from a distance, Voroth could see the scars of ancient battles on its hull. This ship had seen war before. This ship had survived things that should have destroyed it. Open a communication channel, Voroth ordered. The screen flickered, and then a human face appeared. The creature was smaller than Voroth had expected. Pale skin, dark hair, blue eyes that showed no fear. Captain Jack Morrison stared back at the Drath Admiral with an expression of absolute calm. "This is Admiral Voroth of the Drath Empire," the alien commander announced. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Power down your weapons, surrender your ship, and you will be treated as prisoners of war. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Jack studied the alien on his screen. Voroth was large, covered in scales, with 4 arms and a mouth full of sharp teeth. He looked like something that should be feared. But Jack had faced worse. He had faced the cold certainty of death when his ship crashed into that ice moon 6 centuries ago. Everything after that was borrowed time. Admiral Vorath, Jack said slowly, I am Captain Jack Morrison of the USS Valiant. We have not fired upon any vessel. We have not threatened any world. We are survivors of a war that ended long before you were born. We want only to find out what happened to our people and to live in peace. Vorath laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. Peace. Humans do not understand peace. You are killers, destroyers. The galaxy will never be safe while even one of you breathes. We did not start that war, Jack replied. We only finished it. The screen went dark as Vorath cut the connection. He turned to his weapons officer with a satisfied smile. Destroy them. The Drath fleet opened fire. 12 ships unleashed their weapons at once. Energy beams and plasma bolts streaked through space, all aimed at the ancient human vessel. The barrage was overwhelming. Nothing could survive such an attack. The Valiant shuddered as the first wave struck its hull. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Crew members grabbed handholds as the deck shook beneath their feet. On the bridge, Kate Sullivan gripped her console and shouted, Damage reports. Forward shields are holding. Hull integrity at 89%. They hit us hard, but we are still here. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Human ships were not elegant. They were not fast or beautiful, but they were tough. They were built to take punishment that would tear other vessels apart. Layers of armor, redundant systems, and stubborn engineering meant that the Valiant could absorb damage that would cripple a Drath battlecruiser. Return fire, Jack ordered. Railguns only. Target their lead ships. The Valiant's main weapons came to life for the first time in 600 years. The railguns were simple technology by galactic standards. No fancy energy beams or guided missiles. Just solid tungsten slugs accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic coils. Simple, brutal, and absolutely devastating. The first round struck the Drath cruiser on the right flank. It punched through the ship's shields as if they were paper. It tore through the hull and out the other side, leaving a gaping hole that vented atmosphere and crew into space. The cruiser tumbled, dead and broken, within seconds. Admiral Vorath stared in disbelief. That is impossible. Our shields a second round hit another cruiser. Then a third. The human weapons were too fast to dodge, too powerful to stop. Vorath watched 3 of his ships die in less than a minute. All ships. Evasive action. He screamed. Return fire. Concentrate everything on that monster. The battle became chaos. The Drath fleet swarmed around the Valiant, firing from every angle. The human ship was taking damage now. Its armor was cracking in places. Fires burned in lower decks. But still it fought. Sam Reyes worked miracles in engineering. Every time a system failed, he found a way to bring it back. Every time power flickered, he rerouted and restored. His hands moved faster than thought, keeping the old ship alive through sheer determination. Kate Sullivan coordinated the defense. She knew they could not win this fight through firepower alone. They were outnumbered and outgunned. So she fought smart. She used the Valiant's size and armor to shield critical systems. She targeted engines and weapons rather than trying to destroy ships outright. Crippled enemies were just as good as dead ones. After 20 minutes, the battle was over. 4 Drath cruisers were destroyed. 3 more were crippled and drifting. The remaining 5, including Vorath's flagship, were damaged and retreating at full speed. The Valiant hung in space, battered but victorious. Smoke poured from a dozen breaches in its hull. Emergency teams worked frantically to seal the damage. But the ship was still there. The crew was still alive. Jack slumped back in his chair, exhausted. Casualty report. Kate's voice was quiet. 17 dead. 42 wounded. Dr. Lin is doing everything she can. 17 lives lost. 17 humans who had survived 6 centuries only to die in the first battle. Jack felt each death like a wound in his own chest. But he could not afford to grieve. Not yet. The Drath will come back, he said. They will bring more ships next time. We need allies, Kate agreed. We cannot fight everyone, Sif an answer. Athena's voice filled the bridge. Captain, I am receiving a communication from a Sonari vessel. They are requesting permission to approach under a flag of truce. Jack exchanged a glance with Kate. The Sonari. The traders who cared only for profit? Could they be trusted? Probably not. But did the Valiant have a choice? Let them come, Jack said. But keep the guns ready. Just in case. The galaxy had just learned a painful lesson. Humans were not easy prey. They were not relics to be swept away. They were survivors, and they were only getting started. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of tension, of waiting, of hoping against hope. The Sonari had given them star charts and supplies in exchange for promises of future trade. Prelate Cirrus had smiled her knowing smile and wished them well. She did not believe they would find anything good. Neither did Jack. The crew gathered on the bridge as the Valiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel in the Sol system. For a long moment, nobody spoke. They just stared at the view screen, at the tiny blue dot that grew larger as they approached. Earth. Home. The birthplace of humanity. But something was wrong. Even from far away, they could see it. The continents were there, familiar shapes that every human child learned in school. But the colors were wrong. The lights were wrong. Where there should have been the glow of cities, there was only darkness. Athena, Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper, scan the planet. The AI took her time before answering. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual, almost gentle. Scanning complete, Captain. I am detecting no human life signs on the surface. Atmospheric composition has changed significantly. Radiation levels are elevated in multiple regions, consistent with nuclear bombardment. Major population centers show extensive damage. Some structures remain, but they are overgrown with vegetation. Earth has been uninhabited for approximately 590 years. Kate made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Sam Reyes turned away, unable to look at the screen anymore. Even Dr. Lin, usually so calm, had tears running down her cheeks. Jack felt the news like a physical blow. He had known this was likely. He had prepared himself for it. But knowing something and seeing it were different things. This was Earth. This was where his parents had been born. Where his grandparents had lived and died. Where billions of human beings had called home, and now it was a graveyard. Take us into orbit, Jack ordered. His voice was steady, but only because he forced it to be. We need to see everything. The Valiant circled Earth slowly. They saw the ruins of great cities, skeletons of skyscrapers reaching up from jungles that had swallowed the streets. They saw craters where bombs had fallen, still visible after centuries. They saw the remains of defense platforms floating dead in orbit, destroyed in a battle that nobody had survived to remember. Captain Athena's voice broke the terrible silence. I am detecting a faint signal from the North American continent. It appears to be an automated beacon, broadcasting on an old military frequency.
Halt.
Flickered in Jack's chest, fragile and painful. Where exactly? The Rocky Mountain region, underground. The signal is very weak, but it is definitely human in origin. Prepare a landing team. I am going down there myself. Kate opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She knew that look in his eyes. There was no point trying to stop him. The shuttle touched down in what had once been Colorado. The air was thin and cold, but breathable. Jack led a team of 10 through a forest that had grown over the remains of an old military base. They followed Athena's directions until they found it. A massive door set into the mountainside, covered in rust and vines but still intact. This is a bunker, said one of the team members. Built to survive nuclear war. Jack placed his hand on the door. Somewhere beyond this metal barrier, a beacon was still calling out, hoping someone would answer. It took 4 hours to force the door open. The mechanisms were frozen with age, and the power had failed long ago. But human engineering was built to last. When they finally broke through, they found themselves in a tunnel that stretched deep into the mountain. Emergency lights flickered to life as they walked. Responding to motion sensors that still functioned after all this time, the air smelled stale but clean. It's filtered by systems that had been designed to run for centuries. At the end of the tunnel, They found a massive chamber filled with rows of cryogenic pods. Jack counted them with growing disbelief. 100, 200, 300 more. Athena, are these pods active? Scanning now. Pause. Affirmative, Captain. I am detecting life signs in 312 pods. Vital signs are stable. These humans are alive. Jack felt his legs go weak. He grabbed the edge of the nearest pod to steady himself. Inside, behind the frosted glass, he could see a face. A human face, frozen in sleep, waiting to be awakened. Start the revival process, he ordered. Carefully, we have time. The first to wake was a man with gray hair and scars on his face. His name was Colonel Ben Carter, and he was the highest-ranking survivor. When his eyes opened and he saw Jack standing over him, he tried to reach for a weapon that was not there. Easy, Colonel, Jack said gently. You are safe. I am Captain Jack Morrison, USS Valiant. The war is over. Ben stared at him, confusion slowly replaced by understanding. The Valiant. I remember that ship. You disappeared during the Battle of Proxima. We crashed on an ice moon. We have been frozen for 6 centuries. Ben closed his eyes and let out a long breath. 6 centuries. And you survived. So did you. When Ben was strong enough to stand, Jack helped him walk through the bunker. They passed pod after pod, soldiers and scientists who had sealed themselves away as a last desperate act. Ben explained what had happened. The attack came without warning. They hit Earth, Mars, all the colonies at once. We fought back hard, but there were too many of them. When it was clear we could not win, the generals ordered us to hide, to wait. They said that someday someone would come back for us. Took a while, Jack admitted. Ben laughed, a rough sound full of pain and relief. Better late than never, Captain. Over the following days, all 300 survivors were awakened. Many wept when they learned how much time had passed. Some raged against enemies who were long dead, but all of them, without exception, were ready to fight again if needed. The Valiant now carried over 700 humans. It was not an army. It was barely a village. But it was more than Jack had dared to hope for before they left Earth. Jack walked alone through the ruins of a city that had once been called Denver. The streets were choked with trees and bushes. Animals watched him from the shadows, creatures that had never seen a human being before. He found the remains of a statue in what had been a public square. The figure was weathered beyond recognition, but the plaque at the base was still readable. It said simply, "In memory of those who served." Jack knelt before the statue and made a silent promise. Humanity would not die, not while he still breathed, not while his crew still stood. They would find more survivors. They would rebuild, and someday Earth would be home again. The news of what the humans had found on Earth spread quickly. The Sonari information networks carried the story to every corner of the galaxy. 700 humans. Not just one shipload of survivors, but an entire community. Enough to rebuild. Enough to threaten. The reaction was immediate. Ambassador. Velith of the Valorian Collective addressed the Galactic Concord with fury in his voice. This is our worst nightmare. The humans are breeding like insects. Today, there are 700. Tomorrow, there will be 7,000. We must act now, before it is too late. Admiral Vorith, still nursing the shame of his defeat, stood beside his old rival. For once, I agree with the Valorian. We cannot allow the humans to rebuild. I am prepared to commit the full strength of the Drath Empire to their destruction. The vote was quick and brutal. The Valorian Collective and the Drath Empire would combine their fleets. 200 warships, the largest armada assembled in centuries, would hunt down the Valiant and end the human threat forever. Prelate Cirrus of the Sonari watched the proceedings with a troubled expression. She had traded with the humans. She had seen their captain, looked into his eyes, and understood something the others did not. These were not monsters. They were survivors. But the Sonari were not warriors. They could not stand against 2 empires. She sent a quiet warning to the Valiant before returning home. It was all she could do. On the bridge of the human ship, Jack Morrison received the message with grim acceptance. 200 warships. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets? Against that force, the Valiant was nothing but a target. We cannot fight them, Kate said quietly. Not this time. No, Jack agreed. We cannot. Colonel Ben Carter stood nearby, his arms crossed over his chest. He had listened to everything, studied the tactical situation, and reached his own conclusion. Then we do not fight them, Captain. We fight their minds instead. Jack turned to face him. Explain. Ben stepped forward, his eyes bright with the cunning of a soldier who had survived against impossible odds. The aliens fear us because of stories. Stories of human monsters, human demons, human nightmares. But we know the truth. We did not start that war. They attacked us. They murdered our people. They destroyed our home. What are you suggesting? We tell everyone. Not just the empires. Everyone. Every species in the galaxy. We show them what really happened. We let them see Earth, the ruins, the evidence of genocide. We make them understand that we are not the villains of this story. Jack considered the idea. It was bold. It was risky. And it might be their only chance. Athena, he said, can you access galactic communication networks? With sufficient time, I can infiltrate most major broadcasting systems, the AI replied. However, this would require lowering our defensive capabilities temporarily. Do it. Prepare a message. Include everything. Our historical records, footage of Earth, the evidence of what was done to our people. And I will speak directly to the galaxy.
Ow.
The crew worked through the night. They gathered images of the ruins, recordings from the bunker survivors, and data that proved humanity had been attacked without provocation. When everything was ready, Athena launched her intrusion. Across 1,000 worlds, screens flickered. Normal programming stopped. And then a human face appeared. Captain Jack Morrison, looking tired but determined. My name is Jack Morrison, he began. I am the captain of the USS Valiant and the leader of 700 human survivors. For 600 years, we have been frozen, forgotten, while our people were hunted to extinction. Now we have awakened, and we have learned the truth. Images appeared beside him. Earth before the war, blue and beautiful. Then Earth after, scarred and dead. Cities burning. Civilians running. Ships falling from the sky. We did not start the war that destroyed our world. We were defending our homes, our families, our right to exist. And when we were finally overwhelmed, our enemies did not offer peace. They offered only death. Every human colony was destroyed. Every man, woman, and child was killed. Our crime was simply being human. Jack paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I speak now to every species in the galaxy. I do not ask for pity. I do not ask for help. I only ask that you know the truth. The empires that rule over you today are built on genocide. They will tell you that we are monsters. But look at what they have done. Look at the ashes of our world, and decide for yourselves who the real monsters are. He took a deep breath. We want to live. We want to rebuild. We want peace, but we will not surrender. We will not bow. If you come to destroy us, we will fight, and we will make certain that the galaxy never forgets what was done here.
Oh.
The broadcast ended. For a long moment, the galaxy was silent. Then the messages started coming. Small ships appeared on the Valiant scanners. Vessels from minor species who had long suffered under Valorian and Drath rule. They offered support. They offered shelter. They offered hope. When the enemy armada finally arrived, they found something unexpected. The Valiant was not alone. 17 Sonari trading ships had positioned themselves between the humans and the fleet. A gesture of defiance from a people who were supposed to be neutral. Behind the Sonari, more ships gathered. Refugee vessels. Independent traders. Even a few Valorian and Drath defectors who could not stomach genocide. Admiral Vorith stared at the scene before him, his rage turning to uncertainty. This was supposed to be simple. This was supposed to be slaughter. Instead, he faced a coalition that was growing by the hour. Jack opened a channel to the enemy fleet. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Admiral Voroth, you came here to destroy us, to finish what your ancestors started. But look around you. The galaxy is watching. If you fire now, you will not be remembered as heroes. You will be remembered as murderers. Is that the legacy you want?" Vorath did not answer. His claws tightened on the arms of his command chair. "We remember what was done to us," Jack continued, "but we are willing to forgive. We are willing to move forward. We are offering peace, Admiral. Real peace. The kind that lasts. Take it. For your sake and ours." The silence stretched for an eternity. Then, one by one, the Drath ships began to power down their weapons. Voroth watched his fleet stand down, knowing that the moment had passed. The fury that had burned in him for so long flickered and died. "This is not over," he said quietly. But even he did not believe it. The armada withdrew. No shots were fired. No lives were lost. And the galaxy breathed again. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The Synari formally allied with the human survivors. Other species followed. The Galactic Concord, pressured by its own members, offered humanity a seat at the table. Jack accepted. Not as a conqueror, not as a victim, but as a survivor, ready to build something new. 1 year later, small human settlement grew on a moon provided by the Synari. Children played in streets that had never known war. Families built homes that would last for generations. Kate Sullivan, now captain of her own ship, stood beside Jack on the observation deck of the Valiant. "Do you think there are more of us out there?" she asked. Jack watched the stars. The galaxy was vast, filled with secrets and survivors. He thought about hidden bunkers and frozen pods, about humans who might still be waiting to be found. "I know there are," he said, "and we will find them." Athena's voice echoed through the bridge. "Captain, I am detecting an encrypted signal on a human military frequency. Origin, the Andromeda border." Jack smiled. The galaxy had tried to destroy humanity. It had failed, and now the humans were coming home.